Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome here today. Good morning and welcome to the 11th anniversary of the National Apology for Forced Adoptions. I'm your MC, Chris Mundy. I'm a former worker of Jigsaw Queensland, now for Neighbourhood Centres Queensland. But more importantly, I am an adoptee from the forced adoption era from 1973. Forced adoption has impacted me on a personal level as it has impacted all of you. I would also like to extend a welcome to those watching today's event via our live webcast. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we're meeting today, the Yagara and Turrbal people. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We would also like to acknowledge and thank all the people who advocated over many years for the reality and impacts of forced adoption to be revealed. The ones who contributed so much to supporting those who are affected and who, through their efforts, gained a national apology for forced adoptions. Without you, this day would not be happening. Thank you to the Australian Government, Department of Social Services for funding this event. And apologies for today have been received from Stephen Bates, the Federal Member for New Farm, the Honourable Kerri Mullen, Queensland Minister for Child Safety, the Reverend Bruce Moore, the Moderator for the Uniting Church Queensland Synod, and Adam McIntosh, the General Secretary of the Uniting Church Queensland Synod. And today we welcome Claire Moore, former Senator and Deputy Chair of the 2012 Inquiry into Forced Adoption Policies and Practices. One of the outcomes of this inquiry was a national apology for forced adoptions in March 2013 by Prime Minister Gillard, and funding for forced adoption support services in each state around Australia. We also welcome the Very Reverend Peter Catt, Dean of St John's Cathedral, Miss Charlotte Smith, outgoing CEO of VANISH Victoria, and Miss Claire Hamilton, representing the family of the late Margaret Hamilton. Thank you also to the group that planned today's event, which was made up of Trish Large OAM from Alas Australia, Colleen Bernard and Therese Hawken from Origins Queensland, Kerri Saint and Judy Glover from the Association of Adoptees, Vivian Timmermans from You Gave Me a Voice, and Trevor Jordan OAM and Heather Herman from Jigsaw Queensland. They all worked with the Forced Adoption Support Service for planning today's event. So to start off with for today's ceremony, we're going to light some candles. And these candles acknowledge those who have worked so hard to gain the apologies for forced adoption, and all those family, friends and others who have supported them. I'd like to firstly invite Trish Large, OAM, from Alas Australia to come and light the first lantern. Thank you, Trish. Colleen Bernard and Therese Hawken from Origins Queensland. Kerri Saint from Association for Adoptees. Vivian Timmermans from You Gave Me a Voice. Not here? Okay. And Heather Herman from Jigsaw Queensland. Thank you for lighting those candles, and thank you for your advocacy, which created the National Apology for Forced Adoptions. I'd like to now invite the Honourable Claire Moore, former Senator for Queensland, to make a presentation to the family of Margaret Hamilton. Thank you, Claire.
Good morning, everyone, and it's a really special day for so many in this room and so many who are not with us, and it's a wonderful opportunity and a special opportunity to remember those who are no longer with us. And today it is a genuine pleasure for me to be able to be involved with all of you in remembering and thanking and celebrating Margaret. Margaret was one of the first people who came to see me and Meredith in my office, who's walked this whole journey, and many of you know her well. So Meredith, thank you. I'm going to make this public statement of thank you to you, and thank you for Margaret as well, because I know you talked often. The first morning that we received the visitation from a group of women who wanted to come and talk to us about forced adoptions. We'd just been through another range of Senate inquiries, and we thought we'd heard the horrors that had happened in our community. But when these three women came in and opened up their lives to us about the horrors that they had faced, and so many others, there was no option. There was no option. There had to be further action, and we had to be involved. And you know who you are. And I'm not going to name anyone because I'm talking about Margaret now, and she's got front of stage, which is something she didn't take very often. She saw herself as part of the team. And that's why I want to just concentrate on her today. She came, and a very tall, very beautiful, very quietly spoken woman. And they sat in the office and we had tea, and we were just blown away by the way they just started sharing with us what their lives had been, what their fears for their own families were, because they actually shared that they were concerned that their experiences may have impacted into the future. And Margaret always talked about her boy. Always. It was though he was there beside her. And I think for me, and then later when the Senate inquiry got going and Margaret had the opportunity again with her team, to talk to Rachel Seward and Sue Boyce and other people who were involved in that process. But I remember those two women particularly, and I think that when I talk, I'm talking on their behalf. They are all with us. She again, by her particular style and also her strength, and also her absolute resilience, because not just her personal story about the loss she suffered with her boy, but also her determined struggle with the Anglican Church. And I think that she was a leader in that and inspired other women and men who had been impacted by this horror in our community, a horror that no one knew about. And if they did know about it, they deliberately turned away because it was too hard to know about. And I think it's just a very special time for all of us as we think about everyone that this has touched, to remember. And Claire, where are you? Claire, a very special time for you, because after the first couple of meetings with your mum, you came along as well. And I thought that also was really important for us to truly understand that this is not a single personal impact. It goes over so much time. And I want to particularly thank you as well, because coming along and talking in those spaces can be quite challenging. And you were there, and you were there with your mum, and you were talking about your brother, and then the overwhelming sadness that then Margaret came back to me and said that she buried her boy. She found him and then she lost him again. And for too many of the people involved, that is a common story, because life has been hard. Life has been very hard and continues. But today, amidst the other notifications we're going to have about the importance of this apology and the importance of sharing our team, I was so thrilled when Trevor rang and said we were going to particularly note Margaret. So for all of us, let's just take a moment to remember her joy, her sadness, her strength, and just the wonderful human being that Margaret was and continues to be. So let's take that time to be together, and thank you for the chance to share in it.
Sorry, I'm very emotional because we didn't have a funeral for Mum. It's the first time I've heard of somebody say late Margaret. It was quite got me. I just want to say thank you to Susan Kelly for asking me. She phoned me and she spoke for 20 minutes on the phone crying, explaining to me how much she really appreciated Mum, and she was just wonderful. They got along so well. I'm sad that she's not here today, but yeah, massive thanks to her because I think Mum deserved it. You're a legend, thank you. Please excuse me. We don't need to hear me sniffling too much. I also just wanted to say thank you to everybody who helped Mum, all of the work that everybody put in, everybody and Mum's contribution and her hard work towards all the apologies from the government, the church, the Royal Brisbane Women's Hospital, the Mother's Home. Mum worked tirelessly to fight for herself and other people, and she just wanted the truth to come out. I have to say that in Mum's death, her dying wish was to have her son's name, Paul Ryan Oakhill, onto her death certificate, and that can't happen yet. So if anybody wants to take that baton and fight for that, because that might be something that you might want yourself, that can't be achieved yet. I do have a letter that I'm happy to share with anybody who wants to take that baton and run with it, that says which policies can't allow that to happen. So thank you very much for acknowledging Mum today. I really appreciate it, and thank you for your beautiful speech.
The second favour that Trevor asked when he rang was to give me the opportunity to introduce our key speaker for this morning. And it's a genuine pleasure, Charlotte, and welcome to Queensland. And I've got a short bio, which I am going to read. I've already talked with Margaret about reading bios, but I think it puts her background into place as to why she's here with us. And she's told me that she is the outgoing CEO of VANISH. VANISH is a marvellous organisation in Victoria, Victorian Adoption Network for Information and Self-Help, a community organisation established by and for adults affected by adoption. She's been involved with VANISH for 14 years and leading the organisation since 2016, so it covers a lot of the period that we're remembering and the lead up to the Senate inquiry and so on. Charlotte was separated from her mother as an infant and adopted and raised by strangers. Her reunion with her late mother, father and extended family spanned 3 decades and took her from one side of the world to the other. Charlotte is passionate about individuals affected by separation and adoption, achieving justice and having their rights upheld and their needs met throughout their whole lifetime. She believes lived experience must be front and centre of policies and practice for this to happen. Her advocacy has involved you'll all relate to this. This has involved making submissions, lobbying politicians, appearing in the media, running awareness-raising events and training community welfare workers, health and mental health professionals. The job never ends. She presented at the last adoption conference and is a member of the Aged Care Diversity Consultative Committee and the Forced Adoption Online Training Advisory Group. Today we'll hear from Charlotte about the recent Victorian inquiry into responses to historical forced adoptions, which I know we're very keen to know about, and the new Redress scheme for mothers. Thank you, Charlotte, for joining us.
Thank you very much, former Senator Claire Moore. It's an absolute honour to be introduced by you on this auspicious day, and I deeply appreciate all that you've done for our community over all these years, decades, in fact. Good morning, everyone here and everyone watching online. I would like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara peoples as the original owners and custodians of the land we're meeting on today. I pay my respects to all the elders, past, present and emerging, and to any First Nations people present today. I acknowledge those individuals present representing their organisations and groups already mentioned, the Very Reverend Dr. Peter Catt, Trish Large, Colleen Bernard, Therese Hawken, Kerri Saint, Judy Glover, Vivian Timmermans, Trevor Jordan, Heather Herman and Joanne Sparrow from Jigsaw Queensland, who, with their team and other stakeholders, have planned and arranged this wonderful event. Thank you, Claire, for your very moving tribute to Margaret Hamilton. I was deeply moved by that. My late mother grew up on the banks of Brisbane River, just 12 kilometres south of here in Yeronga. So Queensland is my motherland, something that I didn't find out until I was 28, and I'm very glad to be here again. Oh, where am I pointing? Up there? Okay. I've been asked to talk about the Parliamentary Inquiry in Victoria and the resulting historical forced adoptions redress scheme, which opened for applications last month. It's impossible to talk about these, however, without touching briefly on what occurred in the decades leading up to the Victorian inquiry, already touched on by the other speakers so far. So firstly, there have been many individuals, groups and organisations who have advocated for recognition, justice and support for decades. It's impossible to capture in a slide the history of advocates and change makers and all they achieved. I didn't even attempt it. Through speaking their truth, providing evidence and never giving up, they've succeeded in bringing about inquiries, legislative reviews, changes to laws, policies and practices. There have been court cases, there have been compensation claims shrouded in non-disclosure agreements, and there have been made promises, many of which have been broken. Then, in 2011, the Senate inquiry took place, resulting in the report in February 2012, which included 20 recommendations, including that each state issue an apology and that there be a national apology. And that's what happened. So the state apologies were rolled out, with WA being the first state in October 2010, right through to New South Wales in December 2012. And just to note that the Northern Territory government stated it would not issue an apology due to not having jurisdiction until 1978. Then came the day that we're here to commemorate, the National Apology for Forced Adoptions on the 21st of March 2013. That is a day that none of us will forget, those of us who were there. It was extremely powerful, moving, and it really hit the mark for many. There were two other recommendations that I want to refer to of the 20 from the Senate report, and these relate to redress. Recommendation 11 was the committee recommends that the Commonwealth should lead discussions with states and territories to consider the issues surrounding the establishment and funding of financial reparation schemes. And recommendation 12 was the committee recommends that institutions and governments that had responsibility for adoption activities from the 1950s to the 1970s, established grievance mechanisms that will allow the hearing of complaints and, where evidence is established of wrongdoing, ensure redress is available. Accessing grievance mechanisms should not be conditional on waiving any right to legal action. These did not happen. There were concrete actions that came out of the apology, such as funding of the support services, the forced adoption support services, and the without consent exhibition, and these were important gains. However, they did not respond to the decade-long calls for redress, and so the advocacy continued. In Victoria, in May 2019, the then Attorney-General, Jill Hennessy, announced a new inquiry. Its terms of reference were an inquiry into support services and responses to the historical forced adoptions in Victoria, to the Legal and Social Issues Committee for consideration and report no later than 31st of December 2020. I think it's really important to emphasise that this was not an inquiry into whether forced adoptions occurred. It was what has happened since the apology, what support services and responses have occurred. Now, I'm sure you all remember what was happening around late 2020, or through 2020, sorry. The inquiry was delayed and extended due to the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns. Hearings were held whenever they could be across Victoria between December 2020 and July 21. And then in September 2021, the report was tabled by Chair Natalie Suleiman, and it had 56 recommendations. I'm not going to go through all of those, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear. But 56 recommendations, it's really a substantial report. It looked at all aspects of support services, justice, and also current adoption practices. The government had 6 months, so let me just go through some of the recommendations. I'm not going to go through them all, but this is actually an excerpt from the VANISH newsletter Voice, where we listed them all, which you can find online. They talked about the social and historical context and the experiences, which Claire has actually appropriately described as horrific, and the ongoing effects. And the main recommendation that we're going to talk about today was recommendation 18, that the Victorian government establish a redress scheme for mothers whose babies were forcibly removed from them, and that happened without delay. And the scheme should comprise of a monetary payment, counselling and psychological support, and direct personal response from relevant institutions and organisations. And then the committee laid out some principles that they believed the redress scheme should encompass. The first principle was do no further harm. They said that the evidentiary threshold should be reasonable likelihood. So it shouldn't be incumbent on the mothers to have to prove that the adoption was forced or the removal of their child was forced. The criteria should be broad and include mothers who gave birth in Victoria, but also mothers who gave birth interstate, who were resident in Victoria, but were sent or went across the border interstate to have their babies. They said the process should be straightforward and that applicants should be supported with legal and counselling support, and that they may choose one or two or all of the components of the scheme. They felt there should be a fixed payment, unlike the National Redress Scheme, which has these tiers of payments according to the criteria. They felt there should just be a fixed payment. Counselling should be lifelong and available on an episodic basis, meaning that any time something, a trigger or a birthday or any reason why a mother might need counselling, she can go to the service and receive it throughout her lifetime. Counselling should also be offered to other family members in recognition of the intergenerational effect of historical forced adoption, and mothers should not be precluded from accessing the scheme if they have made a civil claim. Other important recommendations that I just want to mention very quickly were to do with the statute of limitations. So they recommended that the government amend the statute of limitations so that those affected by forced adoption were excluded from the operation period, which means they can take civil action, even though this is something that happened long ago. And similarly with the Wrongs Act. And then with regards to people who are adopted, the committee recommended that the Victorian government undertake an inquiry into the experiences and effects of adoption on adopted people for the purposes of understanding their experiences and examining the effects of adoption on adopted people, informing the legislation, policy and practices, exploring options to specifically recognise the separation, loss and grief of adopted people, and raise awareness of the challenges they face. Also recommended that the review of the recommendation from the the previous review of the Adoption Act, which was to introduce a no-fee, no-fault procedure for applications to discharge an adoption order. So the government had 6 months to respond to the report, and in March 2022, then Premier Dan Andrews announced an investment of $4 million to design and establish Australia's first redress scheme for people affected by forced adoption, and a $500,000 hardship fund to provide payments to mothers with exceptional circumstances, including those who are terminally ill. They also announced the introduction of integrated birth certificates for adopted people. The Exceptional Circumstances Fund was established relatively quickly, and over its lifetime, it involved the disbursement of $700,000, so they actually added another $200,000 because of the demand, and 74 mothers received payments of up to $10,000 each. Some of those mothers, sadly, are no longer with us. Then, in October 23, the Attorney-General Jacqueline Symes announced the Mothers' Redress Scheme would open in February 2024 and that it would involve a payment of $30,000 and counselling and a personalised apology. This is the announcement that you can see in the newspaper, and this photograph is taken next to the statue Taken Not Given, which is the statue that was arranged by the Victorian government following the apology as a result of advocacy by Arms Victoria and Origins Victoria. It's a beautiful statue, and we have our anniversary events there usually. So the news of this redress scheme resulted in a mixed response from the community. Some mothers expressed being happy that they're finally recognised and compensated. For many, the amount was lower than they had expected based on the redress schemes, on other redress schemes, national and in Victoria, so there was some disappointment on their part. And adopted people not being included in the scheme caused disappointment for adoptees and mothers alike. The fact that the Attorney-General said redress for adoptees would be explored provided a glimmer of hope. A little short of 2 years after the scheme was first announced, it opened on the 1st of February 2024. Some important aspects to note about the scheme, along the lines of the recommendations, are mothers who receive redress through the scheme are not prevented from taking civil action. Eligibility includes mothers who were resident in Victoria but were sent or went interstate to have their babies. The scheme is being run in-house by the Victorian Department of Justice and Community Safety, and mothers who apply are supported throughout the process until their application goes to assessment stage, and they are provided with counselling if the process causes them distress. At the last report, which was a little while ago, over 100 mothers had made inquiries. That was in early February. I understand there's been a lot of interest and a lot of inquiries, and we've been supporting mothers who are making their applications now. This is the website of the scheme, Historical Forced Adoptions Redress Scheme, and you can read more about it on that website and obviously apply through that website. Those are the main points about the Victorian scheme. I would like to just finish by saying this is a really important step. It's taken a long time. It's taken too long, but it is a really important step forward. Victoria is the first. I would hope that Victoria will be seen as the first cab off the rank and that the other states will follow. They really have to, all the state governments have to provide these schemes for mothers and for adopted people. And while they are waiting and delaying and having more inquiries, mothers and adoptees are dying and missing out. So, I urge governments to take action on this. So thank you very much for your time. I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you might have, and of course you're always welcome to contact us at VANISH to have a discussion with the team there. Thank you.
I think Heather is going to come up and just present a gift to Charlotte. So thank you, Heather. And thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'd like to now invite Kerri Saint to introduce the song Chasing Rainbows. Thanks, Kerri.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Charlotte, for coming up, and I want to recognise all your wonderful hard work that you've put into over the years, and you'll be sadly missed. For Claire Moore, thank you. I remember coming in to see you with the ladies, and yes, it's been a long journey. And for Margaret, I had the opportunity of working with Margaret and doing some interviews with Margaret, and she was just a really lovely lady who stood really strong for what she believed in, having her child stolen from her. And I recognise that the children that are siblings are often missed in this process and their pain and trauma. So I'd like to recognise that today. I wrote Chasing Rainbows a couple of years ago. COVID sort of hit, and I initially wrote a song called A Crime Not Known, and it's the song about the mothers and adoptees and having a voice, and through the lobbying process that I'd been doing since 1982. And I got on a bit of a roll because the song A Crime Not Known seemed to really impact quite a lot of people. My second song, Chasing Rainbows, came from my own experience of forced adoption, and sadly the adoptee story is often minimised, unfortunately, and adoptees are 4 times more likely to suicide than non-adopted people. When the Australian Institute of Family Studies did their survey of 823 adoptees, it was estimated that 75% of those that did the survey were suffering from a moderate to severe mental health disorder, despite many of them going to good homes. I struggled with my own story of adoption. For people that know me, knew that I grew up with a lot of abuse. But in my journey in fighting for the voice of adoptees, I met many adoptees that had not suffered abuse but was suffering the same way I was suffering. So this song I wrote in regard to my journey as an adopted person, suffering a complete lack of self-worth, and that I didn't fit into my adoptive family. I didn't fit into my world that had been completely turned upside down. I'd been lied to and told that my mother had died giving birth to me when in fact she was alive. So I thought I had all the pieces until the Senate inquiry, when the mums started really sharing their journey. And the more that I realised the truth and the more that I searched and found my own biological mother and father and my siblings, I was able to morph this song into finding my worth, and that is the treasure that I found that was stolen from me, my value and worth in my identity. And particularly when I found my biological father, who was a bit like two peas in a pod, and he just switched on a light on me that made me understand what was really stolen from me and how I'd regained it by having a relationship with him. So you'll hear the lyrics of the song. It is on the back of here. And as when I wrote the lyrics. I'm not a musician, but thankfully I was introduced to some wonderful people that could transform my words into a beautiful song. And I'd like to introduce Rachel, who has been a real treasure to this cause and to myself, and helping to lift my voice in a creative way. So this song is for all the adoptees who have had their identity stolen and who still are fighting to find their biological family. And I know it's an exceptionally hard journey, but there's something in it that when we find them, we find ourselves and we find the value of who we were meant to be. So I'd like to introduce Rachel to come up and sing Chasing Rainbows.
Good morning still, everyone. I've been up since 4 o'clock, so it's a big drive from the valley. Whenever you're ready, please. Thank you. I've got a cheat sheet. There are times I felt like giving up, always feeling never good enough. No matter what I did, I just felt I'd never fit, and my world came tumbling down. It's the treasure that I found, it's the measure of my worth that was stolen from me at birth. Now I'm chasing all the rain, chasing rainbows in the rain. How my world turned upside down. I'm never letting go of the feelings my heart can hold. No matter what they say, no matter what the rain, the truth is now an open book. Like the memory that you took, the reflection I see is what you stole from me. Time stolen from the past is now firmly in my grasp. The future is what I can see. My mirror, my worth and me. It's the treasure that I found. It's the measure of my worth that was stolen from me at birth. Now I'm facing all the pain, chasing rainbows in the rain, and my world turned upside down. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Kerri. You're now invited to take a moment's silence for reflection. This year, we're inviting you to reflect on the people who have supported you, your friends, family, and others, and what their support has meant to you. And we invite you to just pick up that tag that's just on your seat there and write down the names of those people on that tag of your greatest supporters on this journey in forced adoption. Just take a moment now to just write those down. So when we break for morning tea, we invite you to place your reflections up on the tables here where the lanterns are, just to my right. And at the end of our event, you may want to take your reflection tag home with you and perhaps share those tags with the people that you have acknowledged on your tag. So as we come to the end of our ceremony today, we thank you for coming and for joining with us today. And we thank you for those who are also joining with us via the webcast. The presentation will be available shortly after we end today's webcast, so that you can share it with others and reflect on it yourself. You'll be able to watch on demand by clicking on the same link that brought you to the live event. So before we go and enjoy morning tea, we invite the stakeholders up to we have a photo together. And for the rest of us, please enjoy your morning tea and seek support and chat with one another about your experience. So thank you all for coming today.